At exactly 8:46 p.m., outside a glowing five-star restaurant in downtown Seattle, billionaire Carter Hayes casually handed a half-eaten gourmet sandwich to a trembling woman curled up on the curb. Her face was hidden beneath layers of grime and tangled hair, but when their eyes met, his heart skipped. She didn't speak. She only took the food with shaking hands. But the next day, when she walked through the lobby of his billion-dollar tower in heels, silk and power, everything in his world unraveled. The sharp bite of winter air sliced through the city streets like glass. The traffic was thick with rain-slicked roads, the lights of luxury sedans bouncing off puddles and storefronts like fleeting illusions. Carter Hayes stepped out of his chauffeured Maybach in front of Maison Elara, the most exclusive restaurant in the city. He'd just signed a $22 million contract over foie gras and wine, aged older than he was, but the victory felt hollow. He tucked the rest of his croissant sandwich into the takeout bag, not wanting it. He was tired, emotionally numb. Another deal, another lonely night. And then he saw her. Huddled near the alley by the dumpster, her figure was thin and shaking, clothes soaked through with sleet, face shadowed by an oversized hood. She didn't beg, she didn't speak, she just stared forward like the world didn't even see her, but Carter did. He hesitated for just a second, then something made him step closer. "Hey," he said, his voice low, almost cautious. "You hungry?" No answer, but her head turned slightly, and in that dim streetlight glow something flickered in her eyes. He handed the bag to her. "It's clean," he added quickly. "Fresh. I didn't touch it much." She took it slowly. There, hands brushed. That touch sent a shiver down his spine, and not because of the cold. It was familiar, and for a heartbeat her eyes, green, deep, unforgettable, locked with his. Then she looked away. He stood there for a second too long, trying to place the memory, but she didn't look back. The next morning, Seattle's skyline gleamed beneath a moody stretch of clouds, soft light filtering through Hayes Global's towering windows. The air inside the headquarters was sharp with polished ambition, clicking heels, buzzing phones, and murmured conversations moving like clockwork through chrome and glass. Carter Hayes stood on the executive floor, his usual espresso in hand, dressed in a navy Armani suit so precise it looked sculpted. He should have felt powerful. He always did on mornings like this, but something was off. His mind kept returning to the woman from last night. Those eyes, that moment, that lingering feeling, like he knew her, like some thread from the past, had been pulled taut between them without warning. He was still lost in thought when the elevator doors slid open with a whisper. The noise of the floor dulled. The chatter stopped. Something about the way everyone turned made Carter glance up, and then his breath caught. She stepped out, but not the shivering woman from the alley. This was someone else, or rather someone completely reborn. The transformation was shocking. She walked with her shoulders squared and chin high, dressed in a pristine ivory pantsuit that hugged her tall frame like armor. Her hair, a deep chestnut, was pulled back into a no-nonsense twist. Diamond studs glinted from her ears, but it was her eyes, same deep green, same fire. Carter blinked, stunned. His espresso trembled slightly in his grip. Beside him, his assistant stammered, "Mr. Hayes, this is Rachel Monroe from Delphi Corp. She's leading the acquisition meeting this morning." Rachel Monroe. His heart dropped like a stone. It couldn't be, but it was. She glanced at him only once, the corner of her mouth twitching with something between amusement and fire, before turning her focus to the conference room. Carter didn't move for a moment. Everything around him went muffled. His fingers curled around the coffee cup, and a wave of disbelief broke over him. Rachel, the girl he once sat beside in elementary school, the girl who'd shown up to school in the same second-hand jeans 3 years straight, the one who had a laugh. So wild it made his stomach ache. He hadn't seen her since high school. No word, no posts, nothing. She'd vanished when her mother died. People whispered she went to a shelter. He never followed up, never thought much of it. He was too busy chasing deals and degrees and distractions. And now she was here, standing in his building, in control, and he'd handed her his leftovers on a freezing curb without recognizing her. The doors to the conference room shut behind her. He snapped back to life and handed the espresso to his assistant. "Cancel my calls," he said, voice low, "and bring me everything you have on Delphi Corp. Now." The assistant scurried away, and Carter stood in front of the glass, watching the woman who'd once trusted him with her secrets now walk past him like a ghost-turned queen. And for the first time in years, he wasn't sure who he was anymore. The boardroom was a war zone dressed in marble and brushed steel. A dozen executives lined the polished table, their suits sharp and their smiles sharper. Laptops were open, legal documents stacked like battlements, and the air pulsed with the quiet tension of big money about to move. Carter Hayes entered last. Rachel Monroe was already seated. She didn't look at him, didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge the thunderstorm raging behind his calm expression. Instead, she skimmed through a leather folder, her pen clicking with maddening rhythm, as if she hadn't spent the night curled in an alley, holding a paper bag he'd tossed to her like a charity token. "Let's begin," she said coolly, as though they were strangers. Carter pulled his chair back and sat. "By all means, Ms. Monroe, enlighten us." His tone was smooth, controlled. But inside, his nerves burned, not because she was here, not even because she now controlled the one company that held a patent Hayes Global desperately needed, but because of what she represented. His past, his guilt, and something even deeper he hadn't dared name yet. Rachel handed out copies of her report with calm precision. "Delphi Corp. now holds the controlling interest in Enostream Tech," she said, "which, as you're all aware, developed the compression algorithm currently powering Hayes Global's Northeast expansion plans." One of Carter's senior VPs, Chambers, raised a brow. "So, this is a courtesy update?" Rachel didn't blink. "No, this is an opportunity." She stood, walking to the head of the table with deliberate elegance. Her voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. Her authority settled over the room like fog, creeping in through cracked windows. "I'm offering Hayes global exclusive licensing rights. 5-year contract, but with terms." Carter raised his eyes. "What terms?" Rachel looked at him for the first time and smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "I want a joint venture." A quiet murmur rustled through the room. Carter's jaw tightened. "That's a bold ask," he said. Rachel walked back toward her seat, heels clicking like distant gunfire. "Not when I'm holding the only key to your East Coast market, Carter. This algorithm cuts your energy cost by 19%, and the launch is in 3 weeks. You don't have time to shop for options." Chambers cleared his throat. "We can negotiate." "Percentages," Rachel cut him off with a single raised finger. "I'm not here to negotiate with your suits." She turned her eyes back to Carter. "I'm here to talk to the man who once told me I'd never be anything more than that quiet girl from down the block." The room fell into a stunned silence. Carter's stomach dropped. She remembered worse. He had said that. In high school, when he was trying to look cool, when he was too proud to admit he liked her. He remembered the smirk, the way she had looked at him like he'd just crushed something fragile inside her. Now that girl was gone, and in her place stood a woman who could destroy his company or save it with a single pen stroke. He rose slowly. "Rachel, I don't," she said softly, the hurt barely veiled beneath her confidence. "Not here. Not like this." She gathered her papers and stepped away from the table. "You have 24 hours. My team will await your counteroffer or not." She paused at the door and turned back, only for him, "Just so we're clear, Carter," she said, voice low and even. "This isn't about revenge. It's about respect." And then she was gone, leaving Carter standing in the heart of his empire, surrounded by stunned silence, haunted by words he couldn't unspeak, and a woman he had once thrown away like a leftover sandwich, now offering him the very lifeline he needed to survive. Carter Hayes didn't go home that night. He sat alone in the top-floor executive lounge long after the building had emptied, the city spread beneath him like a glowing circuit board. Glass in one hand, untouched whiskey in the other. His eyes burned into the skyline, but his mind was in another time. Rachel Monroe. He'd said her name out loud once, just to hear how it tasted after all these years. It didn't feel bitter. It felt guilty. He opened his laptop. He needed to understand her now, not just her power, not just her sharp suits and legal dominance, but what she'd been through, who she'd become. It didn't take long. News articles, non-profit filings, archived interviews, a breadcrumb trail through hell. Rachel had spent 3 years in the foster system after her mother's overdose. She'd moved from a trailer park in Idaho to a shelter in Utah. She'd dropped out of high school twice. One article quoted her from a recovery panel at NYU, where she said, "I hit rock bottom when I realized I couldn't remember what my mother's voice sounded like. That's when I stopped waiting for a miracle and became one." Carter's chest tightened. Delphi Corp wasn't just a startup she acquired. She built it out of nothing. The company's earliest roots were an education app coded by Rachel herself on library computers. She'd pitched it at a small tech fair, got laughed off the stage, and used the last of her food stamps to buy a Greyhound ticket to California. From there, she networked, learned, starved, coded, failed, and repeated. She didn't come from power. She didn't marry into it. She earned it, and now she sat in the same towers that once felt light years away from her reach, daring to look him in the eye and call him out for who he'd been. Carter set the laptop aside. There were 2 options: fight her or face her, but before he could decide, his phone buzzed unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Carter, her voice, low, controlled. "Meet me tomorrow," Rachel said. "No assistants, no lawyers, just you and me." His mouth went dry. "Where?" There was a pause. Then, 8 a.m., downtown, corner of Madison and Pine. Then she hung up. No explanation, no negotiation, and somehow that scared him more than the boardroom ever could. The next morning, 7:54 a.m., Madison and Pine. The street was half awake, still wrapped in grey mist and the smell of roasted beans from a nearby coffee stand. Carter Hayes stood on the corner in a long wool coat, collar turned up, eyes shifting toward every passing car, every step behind him. His usual armor, Rolex, leather briefcase, controlled smirk, had been left behind. Today he didn't come as the CEO. He came as a man trying to understand the damage he'd caused. Then he saw her. No heels, no suit. Rachel Monroe wore scuffed boots, dark jeans, and a grey hoodie with a faded college logo. But even stripped of corporate power, she moved like someone who'd earned every inch of her space in the world. She stopped 2 feet from him, looked him up and down. "You wore cologne," she said flatly. He gave a slight sheepish smile. "Old habit." She looked away toward a corner bench. Metal, cold, dotted with graffiti and half-faded stickers. The kind you passed 100 times and never noticed. She walked over and sat. He followed silently. They didn't speak for a long moment, just listened to the early morning city come alive. Car tires over puddles, distant shouting, the whir of a delivery bike. Then she said, "You know what this place is?" He shook his head. "This is where I used to sleep, right here, wrapped in a trash bag, back against that railing. A security guard once told me I was bad for business. Said I scared customers, like I was something you scraped off your..." Shoo! Carter's throat tightened. Rachel, don't, she said. Just let me finish. She folded her hands in her lap, eyes fixed on the sidewalk. You weren't the first person to ignore me. You weren't the worst, but you were the one who mattered. He blinked. I didn't recognize you. You didn't try. That landed like a punch. I don't expect you to remember our last day together, she went on, but I do. Carter searched his memory. Hazy, years buried beneath wealth and ambition. What happened? I told you my mom was using again, that she hit me. I asked if I could stay with you for a few days, just until things settled down. The air in his lungs turned heavy. And you said... She paused, jaw tightening. You couldn't get involved. That it was messy, that your dad wouldn't like it, that you hoped I'd figure it out. Carter turned away, ashamed. The memory now came back like a cold slap. She continued, softer now. I went home that night. Cops came the next morning. Foster care took me away. I never saw that house again, never saw my mom again. And you... She turned her eyes to him now. No fire, just grief. You went on with your life. Prom, Stanford, IPOs, news articles. He sat in silence, his heart hammering, the guilt coiled around his chest like a vice. And for years, she whispered, I thought maybe you forgot me because I was forgettable, that I wasn't worth remembering. She looked up at him now, really looked. But last night you gave me a sandwich like I was nothing, just another face in the street. I was an idiot, he said, voice cracking. Rachel, I swear, if I had known... But you didn't, she cut in, and that's the point. They sat again in silence. The cold wind whipped through the street, tossing her hair across her cheek. She didn't fix it. She let it blow. I didn't come back to ruin you, she said finally. I came back to see if you'd changed, to see if I'd ever meant anything, to see if you'd remember the girl who gave you her last granola bar when your dad forgot to pack lunch. The girl who lied to the librarian so you could sneak into the computer lab. The girl who... He reached out, gently placing a hand over hers. You mattered. You mattered so much. I was just too selfish, too proud, and too scared to admit it. Her fingers twitched under his, but she didn't pull away. He leaned forward, eyes glassy. I don't want to offer you a deal or some PR campaign or a partnership out of guilt. I want to fix what I broke, if that's even possible. Rachel's eyes locked on his. And if it's not? He gave the faintest smile. Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying anyway. She exhaled slowly. For a moment she said nothing. Then, there's a shelter across town, run down, short on funding. I'm planning to rebuild it as a women's center. It was my first roof after foster care. Come with me. Help me, not as a billionaire. As Carter Hayes, the boy who once made me laugh so hard, I snorted Sprite through my nose. A quiet chuckle escaped his lips. God, I remember that. She finally smiled. And this time, it was real. You want to start over? She said. He nodded. Then meet me there tomorrow. No suits, no chauffeurs, just a hammer and a pair of gloves. He stood. I'll be there. Rachel rose beside him. And for the first time since they were kids, they walked off side by side, not as strangers or rivals, but as two broken souls trying to heal what had been lost.